I puzzled over it, thinking like, why is she crying? Like, what is this? And I have a few like ideas. Um,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to No Drama, Just Movies, and we are back this week with another movie review. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned with all the content that we produce on this channel each and every week in the world of TV and movies. My name is Cameron. Being a priest is my part-time job, Kelly Smith, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague here.
Phil, literally geriatric Corwin.
Oh, that's right. And if you haven't guessed it by now, but of course you have based on the title of this video, we are here to give a special movie review. And it is a special movie review because we are reviewing today none other than the Academy Award winning Best Picture at this year's Oscars 2025. That movie being Anora, written and directed by Sean Baker. For anyone who's not aware of, the synopsis of this movie, and you probably are by now, but we literally just came back from watching this movie. It was my first time, your second time, and it was a very packed cinema. So clearly more and more people are seeing this movie post the wins at the Academy Awards. And essentially what this movie is about is a young escort from Brooklyn. She essentially comes into contact with this young Russian oligarch. And what starts as a transactional relationship then blossoms into a marriage, a very quick, spontaneous marriage. And then the young Russian's parents catch wind of this and they're not too happy. So they come knocking on his door and try and get the whole thing annulled. And this takes place essentially all within a week. So what a whirlwind. What a whirlwind. This movie won Best Picture. It also won, I think, original screenplay, directing, and then obviously Mickey took home the Best Actress.
Mikey.
So I don't want to start this off by saying, did it deserve to win Best Picture? I just want to start this off by saying, what did you think? Because I think this is a polarizing movie in a good way. It's getting a lot of opinions, a lot of different opinions from people who are, whether they're outside the sex industry or those who are in the sex industry. What was your thoughts? What's your initial thoughts after seeing this a second time?
Loved it even more the second time. I think it's because I was more like in the mood for it and I knew what to expect. I think it's one of those films like it's very different. So if you're not really in the mood for it, if you're expecting something else or something like that, it might not hit as well. It might not hit as much, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. Loved it even more.
You mentioned, if you was expecting something or you was expecting something else that it might actually not hit you. And I saw the trailer for this movie once and I kind of rushed it because, I just watched a bit of it. I was like, okay, sweet, this looks interesting. This looks all right. It's not what I expected. It really isn't. It really is not what I expected, but in the best possible ways. I think the best compliment I think I can give this movie, or one of the best compliments I can give this movie, is that this is a crazy balancing act. And when I first watched the trailer of this movie, I thought, okay, this just looks like it didn't look like too much of a vibrant, funny comedy. It kind of just looked like a little teen drama comedy. That's how at least I first interpreted it. Boy, was I wrong. I think what Sean Baker is able to do here in terms of like literally this balancing act of multiple themes and undertones. Undertones being the key word, because I feel like there's a lot of subtext and undertones in this movie. And the fact that he's able to balance what is a comedy and feels like a comedy for a while, or at least starts out drama, serious, then turns into comedy, then we'll discuss what happens later. Like, it's so fantastic how he's able to balance it. And this is a movie where it's like, it slowly unravels, but it slowly unravels right in front of your eyes. But it's also slowly unravels, if this makes sense, without you noticing to a degree. So then when you reach that ending and it's like it just hits you, like literally like a bus, like full of emotion. And you're like, at least for me, I'm like, wow, okay. Like it makes you just rethink everything you've seen, and it's fantastic. It really is. But let's delve more into it.
Yes.
Obviously, it won Best Picture. You saw all of the Best Picture nominees, or I think most of them, at least, if not all of them. Did you think that this one was the most deserving now after seeing it a second
Yes.
time?
Yes. But yeah, it's absolutely deserved. I think all of it is deserved. Like we're getting to the acting as well for Mikey and the others. But I think what Sean Baker did with this film is just absolutely fascinating from like a filmmaker standpoint and from a story standpoint. Because like you said, it is partly a comedy and it is dark or drama and a little bit of like everything. But I would say it's a little like it switches like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, like it starts off as this kind of like kind of sleazy, maybe not sleazy, but it starts immediately. Like the first shot is like we get a butt in our face, a half naked butt, and it's in the strip club, right? So we get this kind of, oh, this is a film about sex workers, and okay, it's probably not going to be that funny. And then we have the romance, and it's all like, oh, young love and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, this is a romance now. And then these guys come in, and suddenly it turns into this kind of almost thriller, like, let's tie her up, let's hold it down, let's find this guy and bring him back, and like, and yeah, and especially in that scene, I think once these three guys, or once the two guys, Garnik, I think is his name, and Igor
Igor.
come into the house where Anora and Ivan are. I think that's where it kind of starts shifting even more, like bum bum bum, from like almost terrifying. She screams up a storm, and Mikey or Anora. But then you have these bumbling people like not knowing what to do with the whole thing, and like that's where the comedy comes from. So you've got that shifting and shifting and shifting. So yeah, that's I think what I really enjoyed, and it is a very entertaining film, but you can also like look a little bit behind it because I think it has something to say as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? Because like you mentioned, like some of these comedy sequences in the movie, like these are scenes that shouldn't work. And what I mean by that is that it's not to say that they actually shouldn't work, but what I mean is that they're so hard to pull off. And I think that's why it did deserve Best Picture. Don't get me wrong, I would have still given it to Dune Part 2. But
Yes, absolutely.
that being said, if he couldn't give it to Dune Part 2, the thing about this is that this is a script and this has scenes in it where the ball can easily be dropped. And I think that's where your cast does come into play. That's where the performances do come into play, where you have, like, luckily a director who's written this fantastic script with, scenes that are very well written and very easy for a dip to be able to happen in the energy, in the flow. But it is held up so well because of the performances. And I think that's why it does aid into it does at least aid for me in terms of why it did deserve to win Best Picture.
Can I just throw in, like, he did the casting as well. I saw today, like watching it again. Sean Baker did the casting as well, so that's all him. The directing, the writing, the casting, the editing. It's like, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, kudos to Sean Baker, because I mean, like, the only thing I would say, right, is that, and this is a negative critique as well as a positive critique. And so it's the best thing I could say about this, what I liked about this movie, but also potentially one of the most critical things I can say about this movie. And that is that, like, one thing I liked about this movie is that by the end, you realize that this is a movie where people are slowly revealing to you, the audience, who they really are, right? But then that also for me comes with some criticism because, for example, is it Vanya or Ivanya?
Ivan or Vanya? Vanya's in it.
Vanya, yeah. Okay, yeah. Because I remember calling him Vanya. It's like, for example, with Vanya, like, obviously, he at first it starts as just purely transactional. It's just about sex, and then obviously, he then goes to proposing to her because the fact that he believes that he can stay in America, and it's like, I think that by the time don't get me wrong, by the time Vanya's parents come over, I think there is a sense of, like, in our minds, or at least in my mind, I'm thinking, no, I think he does care about her a bit. But at the same time, I'm not willing to come to terms, or I'm not willing to accept the fact that he truly is in love with her or sees this as this fairy tale that the way that Annie potentially sees it.
Mm.
And so that leads to my critique, where it's like, if we didn't, as the audience, didn't believe Vanya, why would Annie? And don't get me wrong. I know that you could, to play devil's advocate, you could say stuff based on her age or based on the fact that this is quite an overwhelming situational predicament for anyone to be in, and you can quickly get swept up, in this kind of thing. But it did make me go that, if what by the time Vanya is saying bye to her and going on the plane, right, and that moment we finally get the reveal from Vanya that this truly is. There isn't any sensibility there. There isn't an adult there. There isn't a man there. This truly just is a young kid that just is having the time of his life, and he has no idea what's going on. In that moment, obviously, Annie is very shocked to see that. She can't believe that, this is actually who he is. But it's like, even though I did feel that still, it's like, if we as the audience are smart enough to realize that this guy is not who Annie thought he was, why would she? And that was one of my critiques.
But when did we realize that?
Well, I think the main moment when we realized that he's not the guy that we thought maybe he could be is when Annie realizes that, which is when he's leaving on the plane and she's giving one last plea to basically say, what's going on here? Like, are you actually willing to man up? And he declines. And then obviously, we see come then the registry office in Vegas. That's the final, like, yeah, this is him.
I think I like her shift. I'm going to use that word a lot because it's late and I can't think of too many words right now. There's only so much space in here.
It happens.
So I like her shift where she goes from when he does propose to her. At first, it's transactional, yes. She makes a lot of money and she kind of, and I'm sure enjoys like the partying and all that as well. And then she kind of falls for him or starts falling for him, and then he's the one proposing. And at first she's like, yeah, don't joke me about, not in those words. But I don't think she believes it right away until he like insists. And then she's like, yeah, why not? I mean, to have this life with this guy that I think, genuinely likes, why not say yes? And I think that she does believe that they're married, and she does insist on it as well. I'm not sure when exactly it breaks, but there must be a moment where she has her doubts, but she still insists because that's who she is. As a person, she's like, you tell me one thing, go fuck yourself. No, it's the other thing. And so I think it's just a little bit maybe in the club, maybe when they find him in the club and he just doesn't want to talk about this situation, and she realizes that you're just a fucking child, man. I can't like have this with you. And I think the thing by the plane is just her last effort to say like, come on, man, just say something, just fight for this. And when he doesn't, that's, I think, when she just gives up. And so I think for me though, it was that belief that, oh, maybe she has found something that's real. But yeah, because they have I love their relationship at the beginning, because
great chemistry.
Yes, they have amazing chemistry, just like when when they're just chatting, and he's funny and he's charming and he's like I love his puppy dog energy as well, and like her falling for that. I think just having fun with him as well as getting the money and, getting to have sex as well, I guess. So I did kind of want them to work out.
Yeah.
Point.
I agree. I agree. I did want them to work out. And I think that then leads us, obviously, if you want to mention anything before this, obviously that then leads to the slow build towards what I referenced, that big crash being the ending. I mentioned that I felt like, for me, this was a movie about people slowly revealing who they really are. But I think that one of the big things as well is that about this movie is that it gives off the theme of people who really want someone to see them, like truly see them, and that actually happening. And one of the great moments like of this movie is that scene where where Igor and Annie, this is the night before she has to move out of the mansion, and they're staying there having a spliff and a cigarette and watching TV. He's basically her chaperone for that final night. And one of the great things about that is that she gets up and she says that if when we were back there and you tied me, if the other guy wasn't there, you would have raped me, right? And he is in complete shock about this, and he says no. And then she asks him the question flat out, like, why wouldn't you? And he just laughs and says, because I'm not a rapist. And that scene is so beautiful. That moment is so beautiful because I think it is one of the first times, and funny enough, this actually links into a critique, but here it links into a praise, where it's one of the first times where I think Annie finally gets someone who actually sees her. And I think that is such a beautiful moment. And then that only extends, obviously, once we get to the ending, because one of my critiques about it was that, if Annie was fleshed out enough. And I have seen this critique from some people who saw the movie, especially sex workers, who have critiqued, if Annie, the character, was fleshed out enough. The fact that, this mask that we kind of see her have, she kind of seems to take everywhere. You don't exactly see any distinction. Obviously, there's only a few hints of her background in terms of, her sister, her mum being in another state, obviously where she works. You can only assume that a lady this young, with not really family around, seemingly no great friends around, in this line of work, that there could be something, she could have some trauma there. And I think that come the very end of that scene, you do see that is the case, or come the very ending, But do you want to say anything before we hop onto the ending?
I do quickly. What the so much. I do like, since you brought it up, I do like that scene at the end as well between her and Igor. Um, because again, it's a beautiful chemistry, but unlike Ivana Vanya, Igor is more real. It's just, just they're just hanging out, and I can imagine in a better world, maybe they would have found each other. That instead of having these like big parties and all that stuff, they'd just like have a normal relationship, like sitting at home, smoking, chatting, watching the news or something. Um, and for me, the theme was this kind of real versus fake, right? We've got the fake relationship with Vanya, but here's the real relationship with Igor. And it's fun that it's funny or interesting that he's the only one who kind of comments on her real name, that he likes her real name.
Mm.
And when you mentioned like that there's critique that Annie never like shows herself, or we never actually get to see like who she really is. I think that's the point, for me at least, that she always like insists, no, it's Annie, it's not Anora, it's Annie, because that's
Mm.
the name she's kind of chosen for, like she uses it in her profession as well, right? Like when she introduces herself, she doesn't like give a completely different name. She says, "Hi, I'm Annie." So
Mm.
that's kind of her stage name, so to speak, that she uses throughout the whole thing. Um, and so that's the persona she's put on.
Yeah.
And he's the only one, which is why I think the scene is so beautiful, who actually like tries to get that realness out of her, the real person she is.
Yeah. And I think to that point, so go ahead, go on.
And I like as well, like I think that's the only time we see her in like slack clothes and like this kind of more like dressed down version of her.
Mm.
She's a little bit more real. And I know this is like after everything has like collapsed and she's basically got nothing, like 10,000 in her bag, but like she doesn't have a husband anymore. She's probably can't go back to work anymore after this humiliation. Um, but yeah, I think it's also this sense of like this is the real her.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, speaking of real, that then leads us to what I feel, at least for me, is maybe one of the most impactful final scenes
Hmm.
I've seen in a movie in a while. That being obviously the final scene where, we talk about, the realness, we talk about masks being put on, we talk about, people seeing each other for who they are. I think that final scene, the reason why it hits you like such a crash is because it feels like it's finally the moment where everyone lets their masks just drop.
Mm.
They just allow themselves to be liberated and to actually feel and to see each other deeply. And that is, the only moment where, we actually see, I think that we truly see Anora. Like, and I use the name Anora for this reason. I think
Yeah.
that's the moment that where we truly see her, because it's a time where she finally has come to terms with what has happened over this last week. But I think it's also a reflection. We talk about, or mention obviously people saying her character maybe not being as fleshed out. I feel like that is the moment where you do see Anora. That's the moment where, even though Sean doesn't tell us directly what happened at this stage of her childhood or that stage of her life, that's the moment where you can kind of put it together. And even though that would still be an assumption, that would still be a guess, that moment where she's just breaking down, finally in the arms of someone who sees her for who she is, or at
Yeah.
least is willing to see her for someone who isn't just, a sex worker. I feel like that's truly the moment where you can kind of go, okay, I see Honora here. And it's so beautiful, but it's also so heartbreaking. But that's why I think that it works. Yeah, so what was your thoughts on the ending?
I really enjoyed that, like that ending as well. Like it was, like you said, a bit heartbreaking, but I puzzled over it, thinking like, why is she crying? Like, what is this? And I have a few like ideas. I don't think it's like her past trauma. I think it's, well, more recent past. I think it's because she's someone who always like tries to be strong, and she always gives lip and all that stuff. And I guess she has to as well. Um, but in everything we see, she's kind of standoffish as well. Um, but now that all this has happened, and she's in the car with
Igor.
him, Igor, she suddenly allows herself all that to just come out. And everything that has literally happened over this, like, well, past day really, is now coming to the surface, and she just lets go, and she allows herself to be weak in that moment. Um, yeah, that's my, I think, interpretation where I landed right now, kind of. But I don't know, because like there's also this idea of like this it's transactional thing as well, right? Everything is a transaction. In the sense that he was kind to her, and I think that's where the rape thing comes from as well. That she's kind of sees this as, well, why didn't you get yours? Why didn't you take something from me when you could? Um, and so when he does is kind to her, when he does give her the ring back as well, she's like, well, I have to give you something in return now. So here's some sex. Um, and when he does try to kiss her, I don't know if that's her going, crap, he actually is that nice. There's nothing like behind that, nothing underneath that. He doesn't want anything from me. He just wants to be nice to me. And if that is like finding this reality or the realness of someone, uh, breaks her down.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful ending. Last thing I'll say,
Mm.
obviously, before we wrap up, Sean Baker did say that initially this scene had some dialogue in it, but they decided after doing a couple takes to cut all dialogue completely and just have it in silence. And I think that did work.
Yeah.
I think it added a lot to it. But obviously, that will do it for our review of Anora. So let's go to our IC review scores out of 10. How many ICs out of 10 will you give Anora?
I'll give it a solid 9.5. I think it's gone up from the first time I watched it because, like I said, I expected it more. And I think that's why I'm taking this 0.5 off. You have to really be in the mood for it, for it to work on you. But it's a fantastic film. Like everything, like the acting, the writing, the directing, it is just wonderful.
Couldn't have said better myself. I'm gonna go a little bit down though. I'm gonna go with 8.5 ICs out of 10. And it's not that I don't think that this is tremendous. I think that it is fantastic, but that's just the mark I feel comfortable at the moment. I don't think it's a 9 for me, but I think it definitely is an 8.5. But I think with another watch potentially, or as time goes by, it could
Yeah.
easily go up to a 9, similarly how it did for you. So you're going with 9.5 ICs out of 10.
Okay.
I'm going with 8.5 ICs out of 10. That will do it for our review of the Academy Award winning Best Picture, Anora. Once again, we are No Drama, Just Movies. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hop down in the comment section below. Let us know your thoughts on this movie and if you thought that it was deserving of the Academy Awards that it received, and also just what your genuine thoughts are of this movie, especially if you have seen it post the Academy Awards itself. Like, comment, share, do the full shebang. You know what to do. My name is Cameron. Being a priest is my part-time job, Kelly Smith, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague here.
Bill, literally geriatric Corwin.
Oh, that's right. Once again, we are No Drama, Just Movies. Thank you very much for checking out our review today, guys, and we will see you at the Oscars next year. Thank you very much, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.